Hi, this is Carl Polachuk, and this is another SOP video for managed service providers. Quick note, a lot of people have asked me about the finger. They want me to give them the finger, but I don't want to do that. I had somebody in here for a job interview last week, and he asked me, "Oh, there's the finger. Where did you get that?" Well, I got it at a local store that sells learning supplies and science stuff for kids. And it says right on here, learningresources.com. So if you're interested in a cool pointing finger, that's where you can get it. Now for today's SOP. We're going to talk a little bit about modern disaster recovery in very small businesses. First important tip about disaster recovery is it should be on paper. In other words, everyone says, oh, you need it electronically, you need it electronically. Okay, that's true, but you also need a paper copy somewhere because you're talking about a disaster. Let's just assume the electricity's out in the entire building, the server has crashed, a hard drive has failed, the building burned down. So if you've got a nice disaster recovery plan on that hard drive, that crashed, in the server, that burned down, you got nothing. So you need to have at least one copy somewhere else that you can print out, and you should make sure that you've got that available and you know where it is for every single client. If nothing else, there should just be a note somewhere that says, in case of emergency, go to this folder, print off this document. Now, there are many different kinds of approaches to disaster recovery. Way back in the day, when I started doing disaster recovery planning in 1993, we had an HP 3000 Mini, and the idea was that we were going to go put our system on another Mini short term, and then we're going to replace every piece of equipment exactly as we had it. Well, that's a silly approach in the 21st century, especially in small business. Let's say that your server is a 2010 server. Okay, well, you're not going to go get a 2010 server. You're going to either buy a new server with 2016, or you're going to spin up an instance in the cloud, but you're not going to go get the exact same technology. So write your plan as if you're going to replace everything with new technology. We are far less dependent on the specific hardware than we used to be. Today, most true disasters in a small business are associated with either an Active Directory incident or a data incident. So rebuilding Active Directory or rebuilding a company and having to recreate Active Directory is a matter of having properly backed it up in the first place, and in most cases that's as simple as backing up the system state and verifying that backup every month. So you need to be able to practice restoring a system state, restoring an Active Directory. But by far the most common kind of disaster is simply replacing data that has been lost. So we need to make sure that we can get it back, and we can get it back in a timely manner. The 800-pound gorilla of disaster recovery is the BDR that can spin up a virtual machine in a matter of seconds. So if you've got that in place, you're good to go, although obviously you have to then rebuild the original server. But that way you're in business continuity mode and not really disaster recovery for more than about 30 seconds or a minute. And in some systems it might be an hour. But the point is, you just spin up that virtual machine, you're back in business, the client's making money, right? The disaster has been averted, and now you're in recovery mode. Much more common are scenarios in which a drive failed and you have to restore from backup. And again, you might spin up a virtual machine and copy that back down, or you might have to spin up a virtual machine and copy over the Exchange database, something like that. There may be some data loss depending on how things are configured. Today, there are many, many ways to avoid data loss by having redundancy, archiving in real time, that sort of thing. And by far the single most common quote-unquote disaster happens when somebody accidentally deletes a whole bunch of data, and now you've got to go either find it because they really did a drag and drop, or you have to recover it. The cool thing is today it's easy to do disaster recovery, so much easier than it was 10 or 20 years ago. So you should always have a plan for every single client of what you're going to do and whether it is high level, medium level, or low level disaster that needs to be recovered from. You should make sure that you've got something in place that covers all of those. Your backup is no longer simply getting a couple of files back from a tape. Now clients expect you to be able to get the entire office back in short order. So there are 4 simple rules for how you deal with the actual disaster itself. The first one is go slow. There has never been a better example of the rule, slow down, get more done, than during a disaster. The last thing you want to do is rush over to the client's office, sit down, and start clicking on things. First, you need to figure out what's going on. You need to assess what the damages are. You need to figure out what's the latest backup that was successful. Do we need to get something from offsite? Is there a remote disk we can access? Do we want to spin up a virtual machine? What do we want to do? What are our resources? Who can help us out? You know, take some assessment of the situation before you start doing something to try to fix it. And that's related to number 2, you should have a plan. So if you don't already have a written plan for this specific scenario, well, sit down and write one out. So you can say, all right, I'm going to go slow. First, we're going to do this. Second, we're going to do this. Third, we're going to do this. And that way, you are very careful to make sure that you don't make the situation worse. Number 3 is another old-time favorite of mine. You should use a TSR log or a troubleshooting and repair log. I have a link to that down below this video. But the TSR log is going to allow you to keep track of exactly what you did do and didn't do in real time, so that every 15 minutes or when you do anything important, you put a note in that log. And that way you'll be able to figure out exactly what happened and exactly how long it took you. Because you may not have access to a live computer to take your notes at the time, but even if you do, having that log so that you can be accurate about the time of everything and the steps you took is very helpful. And if you need to contact external tech support for anything, you can say, well, I did this and then I did that and then I did the other thing, and you know exactly where you are and what you've done and what you haven't done. It can help you to get escalated to the next level of tech support very quickly. And finally, number 4, you should figure out how you can improve this plan. At the end of every disaster, there's always a scenario where you can say, what would have made this go faster? What would have made this go more smoothly? And in some level, how could we have avoided this in the first place? So slow down, get more done, have a plan, use a TSR log, and always improve your process. For Small Biz Thoughts, this is Carl Palchuk, wishing you all the best in your managed service business.